Okay, let's go ahead and begin this exciting conversation. I want to say hello to everyone and welcome to Emporia State University's Alumni Association's Diversity Talks. I'm Dr. Oswald Allen, the Chief Diversity Officer here, and I'm honored to be joined today by one of our esteemed young alum, Mr. Ralvell Rogers II. And I just want to quickly say welcome, Ralvell. I'm excited for a number of reasons. Number one, this is a great series that Jose and his team has put together from Alumni Association. And this is a way for us to really elevate some of our young alum that are doing some great work. In this case, we have Mr. Ralvell Rogers II. He's a 2018 alum, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, he received his Bachelor's of Arts degree in English with an emphasis in creative writing. He's a ambitious and profound storyteller and educator from Kansas City, Missouri. He focuses on realistic fiction, reflective and experimental poetry. He's a performer and artist. More importantly, he tells real stories related to real life, specifically regarding his hometown, which is Kansas City. Right now, he is living in Washington, D.C., doing some awesome work and making his impression upon that community there in pursuit of his Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing at American University, volunteering, um, doing some real good work in the creative space. And he's the founder and CEO of Ambitious Stories, which I want him to talk a little bit about and how he arrived at that place in his professional journey. But before we go any further, I simply just want to welcome you all and welcome Ralvell. And we're happy to have you. We're very happy to have you. So tell us what are you doing now, and what is going on in your world? We have some of our faculty that um, are really excited to have you join us, and who you've connected with during your past years, and I think this is a great opportunity to update them on how you're doing and what you're up to. So welcome, Ravel. Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, I want to thank everyone for putting this together. I think this is awesome. When Jose reached out to me about doing this, I was like, man, this is great because when you're an undergrad, um, especially for me being in the department that I was working in the English department. You go to visiting writer series, and you sometimes see graduates come back and are part of that visiting writer series. And for me, it's like, man, I would love to be able to be that person one day. Just the idea of giving back is a wholesome and fruitful idea for me. So thank you all for having me here. As far as what I'm up to right now, as you mentioned, yeah, I'm right now I'm in DC. Specifically, I'm in Maryland, but it's all the DMV, and I'm a student at American University right now. I'm pursuing my MFA in creative writing. So it's a 2 year program, so it's not too long. But that's kind of what I'm focused on right now. I also work for a nonprofit in marketing for the nonprofit. It's called the National Association for the Education of Young Children, NACI for short. And basically, they work with early childhood educators, professionals, parents, families, centers, um, with a focus on children from ages 0 to 8, which is a very crucial developmental period in the human life. So it's been a very great experience to be working. I've been working there for over a year now, and it's just been a wonderful experience. So and then obviously in addition to that, we have the company Ambitious Stories LLC. So we just had our first book. We had the rollout. We had our launch, official launch, towards the end of last year. So it's just been a great journey. Very up and down, especially with the unprecedented year we had in 2020. But as I always try to do, is just try to push forward and remain ambitious about my situation. So, yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about your publishing company and your publication. Would you share a little bit there?
Yes, yes. So ambitious stories was kind of started just really like on a whim almost. Like I said, I started it back in 2020. It was around towards the end of July, August, and I was just like, let's just do it. It actually was more so a thing that I had thought about when I was younger, like starting a publishing company. But when you're younger, you don't really know all the steps that go into it. And so the older I got, and the more I saw what the industry was shaping to be viewed for me, um, I was just like, eventually, I was like, let me just do this myself. And it's been so much more fulfilling because not only do I have more control over uh, my art, my stories, but I can help to bring others up who want more control over their stories and who often don't get their stories heard, especially in the Midwest. And that's been the founding like statement for us, or mission, I should say, is really trying to bring up those voices from the Midwest, and bring them to the forefront because Kansas City is the heart of America, but we don't hear about those stories often. So that's kind of the primary reason as to why I founded the company. I obviously had the Kansas City Boys Choir book kind of in the chamber. I've been working with Mr. Ali Robinson, the founder of the Kansas City Boys Choir, as a contractor, as a separate contract. And then at some point, I was asking him, who's going to publish it, and he was like, I don't know. He had a couple people in mind, that I think a couple family members who could possibly publish it, but it kind of didn't line up all the way. And so I just did my own research, and I was like, I came back to him and I was like, hey, let's write up another contract. Um, I can do this. And, he just put his trust in me. And now we're here. Now we're here.
Right. So you saw a barrier, um, and you turned that barrier into an opportunity for yourself. It sounds like you decided that if there were some limitations, then why not you be the one that addresses those limitations for you and other people?
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. And then as far as Kansas City goes, tell us a little bit about what is important about Kansas City in your experience and in your stories, what it is that you want people to keep in mind. I know we had a conversation before,
Yeah.
and you touched on some historical importance.
Yeah.
So, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So, excuse me. So, things that people don't really know, like I said, Kansas City is the heart of America. That's like an also known as like thing people used to call Kansas City the heart of America. They still do. They call it the city of fountains because Kansas City has the most fountains, I'm pretty sure, in the whole world, in the city, which is crazy when you think about places like Rome and these other European big cities. And like I said, Kansas City is known as the city of fountains. And then just thinking about obviously like the barbecue, we got really great barbecue. Of course, other cities and states, they try to stake claim to it, but we all know the truth here. So, but but
And then, of course, the one thing that you haven't mentioned yet is the music.
yes, that's what I was just about to get to. The jazz music, of course. So, well, a lot of people don't know is that, with Kansas City being the heart of America, and this is something I learned while doing research for the Kansas City Boys Choir book. I did a lot of research on the history of Kansas City. Um, And like I was saying, when it comes to jazz music, in the early 1900s, a lot of your favorite jazz artists and musicians, like Ella Fitzgerald and Charlie Parker, they all went on 18th and Vine. Like they were all there. That was the hot spot. Um, and even outside of like the music, when it comes to like construction, railroads, Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes is actually from Missouri. I forget what um what part exactly. I want to say Springfield, but he's actually from Missouri, and we actually have the same birthday, February 1st. So that's a cool fact about me. But he wrote about like railroads, uh, and a lot of his work, even though he went on the East Coast a lot of his work you can see it kind of embodies that Midwest life and the Midwest lifestyle. And another fun fact about Kansas City is Kansas City was one of the first cities in America to like build a bridge, even. And so it's just a lot of facts and things related to American history and Kansas City history that people don't know. Um, and I think it's very important that people do know because at the end of the day, it's part of American history, world history. And so, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Real stories, um, nonfiction, exciting information. So let's talk a little bit about your journey. And as we go forward, I'm going to invite our listeners uh, to raise their hands if they have questions. I think we're going to cover some information, but as we get towards, the 20-minute, 25-minute mark, I want to invite questions. Um, let's talk a little bit about your journey uh, while you were here at Emporia State, and what was it that set you up to come to Emporia State, and then how did you navigate the university? What were some of the challenges and opportunities and successes that you experienced? Talk to us about that journey. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a really. I'm gonna try to keep it as compact as possible because I know we have time constraints. But I went to Rockhurst University, or not Rockhurst High School. Sorry, there is a Rockhurst University, but I went to Rockhurst High School in Kansas City, and it's a private Jesuit all boys school. Um, but it was a real change for me coming from public schools. The middle school that I went to, Irvin Middle School, is not even there anymore, like because it wasn't accredited. Um, I'm pretty sure my class, after I graduated from eighth grade, the middle school kind of shut down after that. So it was a huge turn for me. But what I learned at Rockhurst, even though my grades weren't as up to par as I would have liked, reflecting back on it, um, I learned there's a system and there's a way to approach work. Um, and every day there are tasks that you should kind of work towards and try to complete um, for some of these deadlines. That you have in school, and so and due dates that you have in school. And so to be honest, I if it wasn't for Rockhurst, I wouldn't be able to say that I even went to ESU, because Rockhurst really set me up for that. It obviously was a college preparatory school. So um,
It
that's
helped you build the habits that could carry you forward into your academic success. And maybe even writing today, some of those discipline habits.
Yeah, for sure. So I wasn't even really a reader. I didn't really read much until I met Miss Gansner at Rockhurst High School, my freshman, sophomore year. And I would be there after lunch, and she would always recommend books to me to read. And eventually I just kept coming back to her. And eventually I just start picking up my own books. And that obviously at some point led to me writing things myself. So, but once I got to ESU, it was a whole other thing. I originally wanted to go somewhere even further away, like on the West Coast even. But ESU turned out to be like just far away enough from like what I was grown, like what I grew up in. uh, and just close enough in case I need to come back home. So being at ESU was just different because there was more autonomy to what you could do. Obviously, being an undergrad. But for me, I decided to take my first year or so, really my first semester, to just kind of observe and kind of view what the landscape was of this thing called college, an undergrad, and a lot of the guys that I ended up, being on second truster, I think it was second truster. A lot of those guys aren't even they ended up either leaving ESU, transferring, or they just dropped out altogether. And so it was on me, just like it was on everybody else, to kind of stay the course, if I so choose. Not saying that that's the right choice to make necessarily, because everyone has their journey. But for me, I think it really worked out well because by the time I got into my sophomore year, I was able to get more involved in different activities. I started working for the Bulletin as a staff writer, photographer, eventually a convergence editor, as a web editor. I started getting more connected to some of the professors in the English department, like Dr. Ravis. Dr. Ravis is on here. Shout out to Dr. Kevin Ravis, um, Professor Webb, um, and so that really helped me in my growth, in my writing as well, just to be able to work with them a little closer and focus in on what I really wanted to do. And actually, Dr. Rabus was actually very inspirational in my writing when it comes to um, focusing on Kansas City, because Dr. Rabus he's really like into jazz music, and so he would tell me about people like Charlie Parker, and that would get me to focus in. Okay, no, that is Kansas City in a way. So yeah, that's a little bit of my like first 2 years or so. I could go even further if you want me to, but
Well, you connected with some very important faculty influence, people who were feeding your passion or helping you discover your passion, um, and doing it more than just what was required in the classroom. It sounds like there was relationship building and a network that was being established and um, some real um, investing in you as a person, and you recognized that and you responded to that in a very strong and positive way. That's where you found your sense of belonging. Um, there other people outside of faculty that might have given you some um, inspiration along the way?
yes, for sure. So I mean, I mentioned the guys on my floor, either dropping or transferring or something like that. But a lot of those guys inspire me too.
Yeah.
Just being around my fellow students, like I was able to experience things that I hadn't before. And I would say that inspired a lot of my writing as well. But there were a couple specific like students. You know, Kayla Gilmore was a student at ESU, and she was very um, inspirational in my growth, especially by the time I got to like my junior year or senior year, when I decided to not work for the Bulletin anymore. And Kayla, along with Deanna Williams, who was over the diversity, I think, department at CSI.
Yeah.
Yeah, down at the CSI, they both sat down with me literally like right after my interview, for the editor in chief position. I came to them and I was like, I don't think it went so well. I thought I could have did better, um, and they were like, you know what? Why don't you do your own thing? Why don't you? How about you start your own club? And I was like, I had thought about this before. I thought about starting a book club my freshman year, um, but that never really realized itself. But by the time my senior year came, I felt like I had experienced so many things working for the Bulletin, working for CSI. Even I was co-chair for Talks and Topics in CSI, so I helped bring people like Cal Maynard in, the creative director of Marvel. Forgetting his name now, but He even came in, and it was really just great to be able to see how you can put together events, work with others, and really create a really like cool product for students and faculty to kind of consume. And so, yeah, like I said, by the time my senior year came, I feel like I had all the information I needed. I feel like I knew, like, okay, if I want to uh, advertise an event, I just need to make some flyers, put them up in the library. Most people go in the library to study. Like, if I put some posters up in there, okay, I used to be an RA. Let me reach out to Kayla. Let me reach out to Wade, who used to work there. Let me reach out to a couple other RAs there, so I can advertise to the freshmen and the sophomores and the other students who are living in the dorms. And so it was like little things like that that I was able to pick up on. So whenever I came up on like issues or problems, I was able to like solve them really quickly because I knew who could help me in those positions. And then it came down to the art, the writing, and that's where my connections and my work with a lot of the faculty and even some of my internships that I had throughout my tenure at ESU really came into play. So, yeah.
Okay. And let's talk a little bit about the birth of um, the student organization. Um, Now, what's the name of the organization?
It was called the Black Artist Club.
Okay. And that was born out of something not happening.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And this is why I always tell people, like, just because something doesn't work out doesn't mean that there isn't another opportunity right around the corner. Like, um, what I really wanted was not my path necessarily. And that was made crystal clear once I got this award, the leadership and diversity and equity and inclusion, because I got that not only off the strength of my work for the bulletin, um, but mainly because of the work that I was doing with Meadowlark Books as an intern there, and the other internships I was doing for other magazines, and primarily because of the Black Artist Club. The Black Artist Club, we were a new group, small group, but people knew about us by the end of the school year. And so we ended up having a launch party. And it's so crazy because the first semester we had our first event. It was an open mic. Dr. Ralvell was there. Amy was there too. We had a couple other members there. Deanna was there. But it was such a small event, not many people there. And it was supposed to be like an open mic. But again, this is another moment where, you just kind of rework the Kinks. I think we had did that event like the week of Dead Week, like the week before finals or something like that, which was turned out to be the worst idea, right? Because people are studying. So the next semester we had our launch of our chat book, um, and we had probably over 50 people there. Like it was a big event. A lot of people there. We had a recording. By then we had our website up. We even gave away a few T-shirts. So, and of course, we gave away the chat book as well. So, it really just shows, like, if you stay the course, you kind of listen to what the world is kind of giving you a little bit, and you kind of follow that path instead of trying to force things to happen. At least that's how it worked out for me.
Very good. Very good. And as you speak about, take what the universe is giving you and get into that zone, that flow, if you will.
Mhm.
Um, there are some things that you tried to develop. Um, you spoke about becoming the chief editor, and how that fed into that not happening, moved you into a direction. I also remember in our previous conversations, you had an interest in a historically Black fraternity,
Yeah.
and um, and it's not. And I'd like you to kind of talk a little bit about the challenges around that, and even though there were challenges, what good came out of those challenges? If you could just talk about that scenario.
Yeah. So um, that was an initiative that um, Jason Brooks, he was over the diversity programs, SCSI, before Deanna was, and I believe it was my freshman year, like second semester, where he kind of reached out to me and a couple other Black students and was just um, telling us about his idea to start an Alpha chapter basically at ESU. So one of the issues that we ended up coming across.
Alpha,
Sorry, say
Alpha,
that again.
Alpha Phi Alpha
Yes,
fraternity.
correct. Sorry, yes, Alpha Phi Alpha. So we really wanted to start it. There's a lot of fraternities on campus, but we really wanted something that could be like a safe haven for Black male students. And so um, the Alphas was like, you know, you're the Alphas, and so we really wanted to start a chapter there. But some of the hurdles that we came across, and as I look back on it in retrospect, was one, it's really hard to get Black students at ESU to get involved in these kind of programs or these kind of fraternities, even the Black Student Union, because most of the Black men on campus are athletes, so their time is really taken up. And I know that was something that the Black Student Union was dealing with a lot too, is getting them more involved because in a way, the football team and basketball team and the sports teams are like their own fraternity in a way. And so, and they talk about that. They talk about how like that's their family in a lot of ways. And so, with school and all the work, they have tight schedules. They don't really, not to say they don't have time for some of the Black initiatives, but it really is hard on their schedule to be able to participate in many other organizations outside of their teams. And so, ultimately, that ended up being the main reason why we couldn't really get it jumping because we couldn't get the funding that we needed because there wasn't enough people involved. And then, like I said, because the reason why there wasn't enough people involved is because it's just the Black men were kind of stifled with some of the other sports things that they were doing. So it began to make me question, um, what are the Black men really here for? Are they here to really be educated, or are they here for the profit of the university? And then that gets you thinking about bigger things as far as university and student athletes go. So but that ultimately was the reason why we weren't able to follow through with that initiative. But it was a great idea, and we were looking forward to it. It's just really difficult at PWIs.
Right. And the challenge continues to exist. We've had young men on campus since I've arrived that have been interested in starting a chapter for Alpha Phi Alpha.
Yeah,
And we're continuing to explore ways to support their efforts, but the numbers and the demand um, are a bit challenging. We do have Cap Alpha Psi members on campus right now, and their challenge is the same.
yeah,
Many of them are athletes, um, and and so the culture here at ESU, while it's nice and welcoming, it does have some challenges when it comes to our Black students and their sense of belonging, you
hmm
know, for sure. So so you've really given us a good progressive kind of outline of your path. And I think if the listeners were paying attention, they could see how you had some preparation in your discipline, the way that you approach education before you came here, but it still was challenging.
yeah,
And you managed to develop a network of faculty and staff and students that you you gravitated towards, and it's almost like iron sharpening iron, if you will,
yeah,
along the way. And you were inspired um, to tap into your passion, and that passion just has exploded, and is continuing to thrive as you move into um, your professional journey
yeah.
going ahead.
And I just got to say, not to cut you off, Dr. Allen, but I just have to say too, like, I know I referenced Rockhurst High School as like one of the primary reasons. Like, if I hadn't gone to Rockhurst, I wouldn't be here. But another reason why I wouldn't really be here is because of the Kansas City Boys Choir. Like, if it wasn't for the Kansas City Boys Choir, I wouldn't have even got I wouldn't have even got into Rockers, like because there was a connection between the admissions at Rockers High School, and I think we had someone who was on the board of the Kansas City Boys Choir, and so we had a connection to Rockhurst High School. So without the Kansas City Boys Choir, I wouldn't have even gone to Rockhurst, wouldn't even be here. And a lot of the same things that I was telling you about Rockhurst High School that they were instilling in us, like the discipline and the work ethic. A lot of those things were first introduced to me by the Kansas City Boys Choir and Mr. Charlie Robinson. So, which is why it was so fulfilling when my first book for my publishing company was the biography of the Kansas City Boys Choir, because it turns out that without them, I wouldn't be here anyway. So,
Very good. Thank you, Ravel. Let's um, let's open it up to our participants to ask any questions that they may have. Let's have a bit of a conversation. I know that there are some here um, who know you and are excited, but we also have some participants that are just now getting to know you. We have some students and we have some faculty uh, and maybe one or two community members. Let's talk. Um, where are the questions at? It's open. You can raise your hand. There you go. Kevin,
Yeah,
please go ahead.
I have a question. I don't want this to sound, like ESU self-serving, but I want to know actually to see what works and what doesn't. And so what I want to know is what at ESU helped prepare you for American University and the MFA creative writing program, because that's a prestigious program. And I want to kind of hear what worked and what helped prepare you. If it did, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
yeah, no, actually, the ESU program didn't prepare me at all. It was terrible. No, uh, okay, so for AU, I mean, Dr. Rivers, you've seen all just about all of my work, and so I think that what really helped me in the ESU program was to be able to focus in on what my interests were. And so when I applied to AU, I think in one of my statements I mentioned how, not that I mentioned, I what helped me distinguish myself from other candidates was me deciding to really just focus on Kansas City. No one else has that story. So, and when it comes to applications, for a lot of people who don't know, like when you apply to different grad programs or even undergraduate programs or universities, I should say, if you can stand out from others and really distinguish yourself, that is what's really going to get you um, on the top of that list. So I think just me being able to have that space to be able to go in on what my interests were is what really helped me out. As far as like, did you ask me like what didn't help as well?
Well, wherever you want to go with it.
Yeah, yeah. I probably just leave it there. I mean, it was really helpful, like I said, to just be able to focus in on my interests. So yeah.
Great.
Thanks. Um, yeah, having a focus and distinguishing yourself is important for all of us, I think, when we're competing for opportunity. Other questions? Let's hear what others might want to know about. I have an interesting question for you. Um, we talked a little bit about the experience on campus and your work as a writer. You did some interesting work during your time here. Would you be willing to talk a little bit about some of the interesting stories that you did and who you worked with to develop those stories or complete that work and maybe how those opportunities prepared you for your your current growth?
Yeah, I mean, where do I start? Um, well, one of the first things that I'm thinking about right now was I think it was 2016. when I and I don't even, this isn't even directly related to ESU, but I did a speech for it was a Martin Luther King speech for the Southern Christian Leadership Council, the Kansas City chapter. They had a Dr. King celebration, and this is another opportunity that came as a result of the Kansas City Boys Choir, um, and I was able to give a youth reflection speech, um, and that was just great because it was in like a church in Kansas City, but it was a big church. It was probably like 300 people there, maybe more. And I was able to speak in front of all these people, and I had never spoken in front of a large congregation of that magnitude. So it was really crazy, and it set me up for when I performed. When I'm out here performing in DC, in like smaller rooms and stuff like that. Like it's like it's almost like nothing to me now, because I've spoken in front of larger crowds, and so um, in addition to that, I did have a lot of opportunities at ESU to go to like open mics and to participate in different events. The Ellen Plum's bookstore, which sadly isn't here anymore, was a great space for writers and poets, specifically to be able to go there and participate in open mics. And a lot of times, I know that a lot of Emporians they don't know what I'm talking about, like especially when it comes to like the Black experience necessarily. Um, but you could feel it. And even if you can't feel it, for me, um, it's just giving me time to be able to connect and interact, because what my focus is how can I make you feel it? And so that was a great opportunity that I had just by living in Emporia for a little bit. And then what other work did I do? I did work for a lot of different magazines, at ESU. But one of the big things that I did, working as an intern, for Meadowlark Books, and Meadowlark Books, Tracy Million Simmons is like the greatest to me, because if it wasn't for me working with her, I wouldn't have had all these ideas for ambitious stories. Like, um, and so she was a great support once I started ambitious stories. But I worked with a lot of different writers, helping with their marketing and their branding, creating some events for them. And like I said, it was just a great experience to be able to work with a publishing company, even if it was like a small business. It was still something that I included in my application for AU. So
So what's next?
it all comes back around.
What
What's
what is what is next on your journey, Ralvell?
what's next?
Where are you headed? How do we follow you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram. I feel like I'm like a brand ambassador or something like that. But you can follow me on Instagram. I believe what's my handle? I think it's like at official AST or something like that. And then I'm more active on Facebook. Um, um, you can just add or follow me on there, Ralvell Rogers the second. But what I really want you to do is to support the publishing company, Ambitious Stories. We have a lot of great things that I'm trying to work through right now. A lot of great writers that I'm trying to sift through and be able to bring some great work to you all. So you can follow Ambitious Stories on Instagram as well, at Ambitious Stories LLC. You can like our page on Facebook as well. Go to our website, www.ambitioustoriesllc.com. Subscribe to our email list. We have a lot of great work coming. And like I said, we really want to be able to highlight the unheard voices and a lot of the Midwest voices that you don't hear too often. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now with it. Focus on ambitious stories, but I'm also obviously trying to get through my program. I've been learning a lot, meeting a lot of people, and so yeah, hopefully that'll inspire some great more great work for myself even.
Very good.
I have
Outstanding.
a question.
Please
Uh,
go ahead.
okay, this is Judith Wakefield, and I'm happy to sit in on this. In your writing, Ravel, writers have patterns, habits, and other ways that stimulate the creativity. And so I'm just wondering, what patterns have you established that you believe best stimulate your creativity as you write?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for that question. I think I kind of alluded to this earlier when it comes to Kansas City. Like whenever and this is something I'm learning in the workshops that I'm doing right now at AU. Like whenever I feel off about a story, or I get critiques like about how something's not fitting or something like that. Um, Something that always saves, it's like a saving grace for my work is Kansas City. So if I just go back to writing more visuals for Kansas City, even putting more facts about Kansas City, that's really my comfort zone. And that's kind of a pattern that you'll see in my work a lot. Even when I came out here in DC, like I remember when I came out here in DC, um, I was using words like Jeffin and point and like other words that's like Kansas City lingo, like for the black people out in KC. And so they don't know what I'm talking about. They don't know what I'm saying. Um, and so they were really confused and they weren't feeling it. So what I did was I came back with another poem that like really just pushed it even further, and using more of that slang, but kind of like I said before, like kind of connecting them more to it, explaining kind of what that Kansas City history is like. Um, because even for something like the Kansas City Board Squad book, there's a connection with DC, because the Kansas City Board Squad was founded off the strength of the Million Man March. So I just try to find ways, like I said, to just ground myself in Kansas City. Um, Something else that I'm really interested in is just trying to push my art a little bit further. I can ground myself in Kansas City, but how can I really push myself to be a better creator, so that I don't always have to have that be my comfort zone? I want other categories of comfort, if that makes sense, in my writing. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you, Judith. Other questions?
I have a question. This is Ashley Borders. I was just wondering,
Ashley!
Ralvell, I know when you mentioned Second Trustler earlier, I was like, wow, throwback to that. Um, this kind of goes back to the question about like what's next, but I guess like I'm just really curious of like what is your just like top goal that you're like is kind of just like your dream of yours that you're like, if I can do this, like I will just really just feel, I don't know, like not like you made it, because I mean I think that you could have said that you made it now, you know what I mean? But like I guess just what is like your biggest dream goal? I'm curious.
Yeah, you know what's crazy about that? My dream goal, my dream was, when I was growing up, was to get a New York Times bestseller. Like I'm like, if I get a book that's published by a big publishing company, Penguin House, I'm like, this is gonna be it for me. But then I was like, that ain't really like it, because what people don't know is that a lot of times the New York Times bestsellers are like bought, like they sell that to readers like even beforehand. That's why a lot of times they're New York Times bestsellers before they even come out. And so and then also when I did a lot of submissions for publishing companies and different magazines, I just learned that it's very whitewashed in the way that a lot of the people who are managing the submissions are looking at it. And so they're not going to feel a lot of the stuff that I'm saying because they got blinders on in a way. And so that's another reason why I was like, I'm just going to do this myself. But to answer your question more straightforward, like for me, I'm all about sustainability and kind of making a way for yourself. And so right now I'm working for somebody. I want to be able to live off the strength of ambitious stories, or even any other venture that I may have. And so I'm just, and that's a conversation when it comes to like the Black dollar and Black people kind of self-sustaining and kind of circulating that dollar. And so I'm really focused on trying to self-sustain for myself and my family. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
It's good. So moving from relying on other people to accomplish your success to relying on yourself, and really having that manifest itself in its fullest. And not just for you, but for the people that of those who you touch.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I hear you saying. Some things that are qualified as best are bought and paid for and aren't actually that.
Yeah.
So don't believe all the things that you see and hear. Find the truth, in your pursuit for excellence. Outstanding. We have a few minutes left. I'm going to keep it open for one more or two more questions. Do we
I
have
have
any?
a question.
Yes.
Ralvell, do you reflect back to Kansas City as another way of, and also do you come back to Kansas City and also touch back with ESU as another way of reaching back?
Yeah, so for sure. So and that's something that I learned from the Kansas City Boys Choir Master League. Like they always say to go back and like really just to answer that question really quickly, like that's kind of obvious in the work that I did with the Kansas City Boys Choir book. That's why I did that, because I believe in giving back. And people don't even know about the Kansas City Boys Choir has been around for 25 years. It's a nonprofit organization that's been helping the community in Kansas City for 25 years, and so over 25 years now. And so that's my way of giving back, is to highlight some of these great Kansas City jewels that people don't know about. And even when I go back, um, I try to go to Rockhurst. I try to visit Miss Gansner. I try to visit Mr. Hicks. Some of my old teachers. I really want to be able to come back to ESU and do a visitor rider series or something like that, to be able to touch base with Dr. Ravis and Professor Webb, and so and many other people at ESU who are still there. And I really just, like I said, I want to be able to give back and touch back to the people that helped me, because when I was at ESU, I had a lot of inspirations, people who came to visit campus, and like I said, once I saw them, I was like, man, I want to be able to do that. So I want to be able to do that.
Hey, is that reflection that you did with Martin Luther King, is it still visible to reflect back on, just to be seen?
Yes, it's on YouTube. If y'all want to check it out. It's I'm pretty sure you could just type in Ralvell Rogers the second SCLC youth reflection speech, and I'm sure it'll come up. You can also check out some of my other poems that have been published for different magazines, and even I think I have some fiction work out there too, that have been published. If you can just Google my name, it'll come up. So
Very good. Any
I had
other
a question.
Go ahead, please.
Ralvell Rogers, how's it going?
Chuck, hey, what's going on, brother?
It's been a while.
I know.
When I first came here to the United States, Ralvell Rogers was actually one of the few people that taught me a really valuable skill, which is navigating in America as a Black person, as a Black man, because I'm from Nigeria and I never had that issue back home in Nigeria. And so just it's really nice to see how much you've grown as a person, from your days at ESU, now in DC, and then starting your business, and whatnot, and still following your passion. I just wanted to ask, like, how important is it for you to be a face for other people who can look up to you, like current generation and upcoming generation, and what do you have in store to continue to inspire people to chase for excellence and to pursue their passion?
Yeah. Thanks, Chuck. So I think to answer your second question, like it's the company, it's the publishing company. Like I'm really focused on telling the stories of people. I think there's a lot of therapeutic. Um, it's very therapeutic to be able to write your story and to really get it out there, whether it's by written work or even if you are doing like a video podcast or something like that. I think it's very fulfilling to be able to get your life out there, because a lot of times once you do that, it's like a mirror. You start to see things differently and you start to approach life differently because you can see how you've been approaching it in the past. And so that's like Sankofa, right? Like you learn to go back and get it so that you can know how your future is going, or how you can tackle your future now. And then to look at the first point, I guess a question you were asking me. Um, it's really crazy because I'm not one to really, I don't really want to necessarily be like a figure for people because I don't believe anybody's perfect. And so there's things you can nitpick for anybody. But what I really want to be able to do for people is to inspire them to be ambitious for themselves, and to really focus on their goals and their life expectations. Um, Similar to how I have, I'm really honed in and locked in on what I want to be able to do for me and my family. And that may not be the same for you or somebody else. So it's really about being in tune with the universe, being in tune with your family around you, the people around you, and some of the work that you really want to do for the community. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question. Thanks, Chuck.
All right. Um, Identifying your passion and letting that be the fuel um, that guides you to success. Um, very much, very much so. Any final question before we conclude our Young Alumni um, session today?
I don't have a question, but I just did want to say it's so good to see you again. And, I can't wait till, things get back to some kind of normalcy and we're able to get you back on campus as a visiting part of the visiting writer series or some other event. So I
Yeah.
really look forward to that day. Good to see you.
Yeah, for sure. Good to see you too. I am looking forward to going to Doobies or Salsa. I think Salsa, hopefully Salsa's still there. I'm really sad Ellen Plums isn't there anymore, but I'm excited to be able to come back on campus and to be able to do things with you all for sure.
Fantastic. This is great. This is great. It's almost like a bit of a reunion of sorts. Many lives have crossed your path, Ralvell. You've been touched and you've touched many. I'll say, as you have been inspired, you will inspire many more. Thank you for sharing your accomplishments, your challenges, your inspirations, your successes, words of wisdom through your story. On behalf of ESU and the Alumni Association, we extend our gratitude and